care what it is. Tell me your first memory of World War II as a little girl. How old were you?
Well, it started in Russia in 38. I was 6 years old.
Okay. What do you remember back then? Anything? When do your first memories of World War II start kicking in? During the bombs, the air raids?
Yeah, the air raids. That's why my mother took me to my grandma, grandpa. But it was in, when do I went up there to Anna was in 41. In 41, so I was 9 years old then. It's when the bombing starts badly,
Yeah.
41,
And you were
41, 42.
okay.
In the cities,
And you were living in Nuremberg.
I lived in Nuremberg, yeah, up to that.
Yeah.
And then I stayed up there with my grandma, my cousin Anna, who I always go. She was 3 years younger than I am, so I was 9, she was 6, okay? I grew up with her for 4 years.
What town? What village?
That was Pechbrunn.
Okay.
Pechbrunn.
Yeah.
Was just a little village, little.
When you were living in Nuremberg, what do you remember about the bombing and what was going on in the nightlife when you would go to the store with your mom? Do you remember what you would see on the street, the Jews and things like that?
Oh, the Jewish people, yeah. Well, they were the store, big store, not a little store, big store. And when, we went to the milk store where you buy your milk, and they were all separate, your meat, your bakery, that was all separate. And if there were Jewish people coming in, or because they had to wear the store, they didn't get waited on, Everybody else who came in was privileged, and they were just standing there waiting to be waited on. Some of them didn't get waited on. It depends on your personality, if you hated them too, And my mother always said, you be nice to those people, they people like me and you, they have feelings, so I never, mistreated anybody. They were kids, but they were not waited on.
Yeah.
And I knew that when I was 6, 7 years, about in 38. And then when they had that, what they call it here, the Crystal Night, where they smashed all the stores from the Jewish people, town, especially town Nuremberg. That was one night. And then the next day you heard that, on the synagogues where the Jewish people go to pray, they got burned up and all this,
You remember hearing about that?
Oh, yeah. Hearing it, they heard that the next day,
Yeah.
that what they did.
What about the people that you would see on the street one day and all of a sudden they would be gone? What do you remember
Oh,
those
yeah,
kind
they
of...
were our neighbors. You could be, the Hugheses over there, the neighbors, and next you probably hear a truck pulling up, especially at night, when we were sleeping or something. They picked up such and such last night. He got picked up with a truck. You always hear he went to a working camp, We didn't know there was such a thing as the concentration camp. We didn't know. It was over.
Yeah.
When they opened up the concentration camp, then we find out what went on. My mother and I, they picked the neighbor up and things. They took him in a work camp. Well, we thought they had to go, in a thing where you shuffle coals or the big rocks, or like you see,
In prisons.
But they were in the, in concentration camps, and they get gassed and killed and all this. We didn't know that. Really, most of the people we know, they didn't know nothing about concentration camps.
Do you remember having to go down to the bomb shelters?
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah. Well, we lived in an apartment, so every house had their own shelters in the house. Where there were window, there were sacks put on there, so the splitters and then we had big beams where you put up to the ceiling, so the ceiling don't crash when everything falls down. But with some of those bombs, they was it like we lived in a 5-story apartment building, and our whole street was probably a big street, almost as big as Washington Street, goes from here to all the way, downtown. Our street, the Moshe houses left and right. That whole street was completely bombed out, and we lost 27 people. There were 27 people killed. If my parents would stay in the shelter underneath the house, they wouldn't be here. They got killed. But my father said it was a New Year's Day. It was the 1st of January when we lost everything. I wasn't there. I was for my grandma. My father said, we're going to the bunker. And they went to the bunker, we went under the city, the big bunkers they had, way under the city. We went through the whole city. It was like streets and all this. They only had air shafts where the air comes through. And that's where my mother went to. We're going to the big bunker shelter. And they took them probably 10 minutes to get there where we live. And we heard the bombing all the way up to my grandma. You heard when the bombs fell, boom, boom, and the sky got red and all this. You could hear from Nuremberg all the way up there to my grandma. When they said, well, Marion probably don't have a mother and father left.
Mm.
So.
Tell me about your dad.
And my dad?
Yeah, what was he like during the war?
In the war? Well, my dad did never went to the war. First of all, he was not a party member. They got their little book when you belong to the party. My father did. Oh, he hated Hitler, my father. If Hitler would won the war, my dad, my mother, me, they would have shoot us because we didn't belong. He had no things. And my father was very lucky that he had such good friends, because when he went to the guest house, there were his friends there, and some of them were majors and things. And my father never said, "Hi, Hitler," when you go into. He never did that. He always knocked on the table and said, "Grüß Gott," the hello or something. And there were all the military stuff sitting in there. And my father always said something against Hitler. Or my mother always said, "Carl, one day they're gonna pick you up at night and you go if you don't keep your mouth shut." Oh, my father said, "They are my friends." Yeah, well, sometimes they not your friends when it came to that, But my father must have had good friends because he never got picked up, And then he went up there when the war was over in April. He was a sheriff in that little town, and we holding our white flags out there. So my dad walked loafed around the Americans. What we had probably about 7 Americans come to our house. And they stayed there, they polished their guns, and they put their little rations on our stove, and they were hunting for some eggs with their helmet on. They looked where the chickens were, and they gathered eggs because it was a safe thing to eat, was the eggs, So they did all that. We had some good soldiers, young soldiers, 21, 20. Matter of fact, they learned us that song. My cousin and I played guitar, we were singing, and they taught us that song, "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine," in English,
Yeah.
They taught us that. So
Do
we sing that.
Do you remember it now?
Yeah,
Well,
oh
sing it
yeah.
for me.
Oh God,
Come on.
I know.
You
You are
are
my
my
sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me
sunshine.
happy when skies are gray. You never know how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away.
And that's what they taught you.
Yeah, that's what they taught us.
How cool is
Yeah,
that?
and they had some kind of things because my cousin and I, we always sing together. Like when there was weddings, we go to the wedding with the guitar and sing some wedding songs, and the people in the sing knew that. Marion and Anna, you have to come before the wedding was and sing wedding songs, and all this. So we did that. And those GIs, they had some kind of thing we can sing through it, and then you hear it on the radio. And that's what we did. We were on the radio, my cousin and I, and thing, and they got the biggest kick out of it. And we were only, well, when the war was over, it was in 45, April 45, when they came up there. That almost in Hitler's birthday was somewhere around the 20th of April. And in 40, so I was, 13 years old. Well, my cousin was 10 years old.
So, was there a concentration camp close to where you were living in that
No,
village?
no, but they, when my dad was sheriff up there, the sheriff made my dad another sheriff,
Yeah.
because
A
they
deputy.
needed. And my dad said, don't you dare go on the main street. Every little thing had a main street. And it's when they opened up the concentration camps, they were all walking for miles and miles. And they were from Gera concentration camp. And they brought them through our village, the main street. Well, of course, my cousin and I, we had to be on the main street. Even my dad didn't want us there. And we saw how the SS just shot him right in front of us as kids. And they were skin and bones, and they had those striped things on black and white, and they were just shuffling along. And when we had a slice of bread or a glass of water, and we couldn't give it to them, because they would have shot us too. The SS would have shot us too. And but when we didn't see anybody around, and no soldiers, we give them some water. My cousin and I, we went into the house and got some water and just give it to them. And some of them, they just collapsed and fall down. And then the SS said, if you pig or some don't get up right this minute, I shoot you. And some of them, they can't get up. They were too weak. They got done. They couldn't get up. They had to string them up. They shot them right in the head. Right in front of us. Kids. They didn't care. And then there came a little wagon. And that's when they throw them on there. And then when they get out of the things where there was woods, and things, they dig the hole and just put him in there. Put a little dirt on him and kept going. So when the war was over and the Americans came in, because there were not just German who happened, there were all kinds there were Jewish people and there were Polish people and there were all kinds of nationality. And those Americans made them Germans go out there and dig those guys back up. Then they put him in the casket and such we lived. I mean, our house was, the funeral parlor was in our house. I just opened up another door and I went into the funeral thing where people laid out. And they had those caskets laid out right in front. They made the whole villages go by. Had to go by and see. And then they dig the big grave and put him in there and put cloths over it and shuffle them. But they not there no more. I think I don't know what they did, But I saw a lot when I was a child, really.
What did you have to do to get food sometimes?
Get food? We went to the farmers, you know, and we stole their chicken, my cousin and I. We chased the chicken into the woods, and we chased that chicken so long that it collapsed. And then we wringed the neck and we brought the chicken home. And we would say, I don't know what we said to my cousin, because if they would have known that we just told, we went to the farmer and we begged for something. What we did, really, we went to the farmers and begged for a slice of bread or a cup of milk or a little bit of flour. Or we went out to the fields at night, at midnight, and put dark clothes on, and we knew where the potato fields were, and then we shook the potatoes and took them off and home and put the plant back in, you know, put them back in cover. So we had a few potatoes at home. Or if you knew there was an apple tree somewhere or a pear tree, even to the preacher, you know, the preacher had such beautiful pears who went up his house. And my one aunt was the cook from the preacher. She cooked for them and cleaned house for them. If she would have knew that we were, because the next day they said, I don't know, somebody stole our pears or stole our apples or what it was. That's my cousin and I, we put him in the bottom and we ate it and put the empty dishes under the bed. Oh God, she still got some food. But we didn't, yeah. When we brought that chicken home, I never forget that. My cousin, she was worse than I am, and she was younger than I am. But I always get the blame. If something came up and they knew, they always blamed me for it, because I was the older one. Oh, my grandma, she hit us on the butt, believe you me. You felt it too, grandmother. And you should know better than that. You are the oldest one. But when we got it, we both got it, you know, not just one. They were fair. They gave it to me and to her. We went out to the fields where they had the wheat field, you know, and you know how they did. They made those bundles and then kind of laying them against each other. And if you get some of those, you're supposed to let them harvest their thing, but there is some on the fields, and you could pick those up and brought them home or brought them to the thing and get flowers for it. Where we kids, my Anna and I, we looked for a field that was close to the woods. There was the woods, there was the field. Well, we didn't pick those up on the thing. We just took one of those things and dragged it into the woods and had our scissor and put it in our things there, you know. So they thought we picked them up from the thing, but we didn't. We just took one of those things and snipped it all up and put it in our thing and brought it to the things, and we got flour for it. It was tough time because, well, up there, but when I was in Nuremberg there was no food. I went hungry all day long with no food. There was no food. We got stamps, food stamps, but they were very little. You might get the whole week a pound of meat, the whole week. Oh, my mother usually saved the thing, so on Sunday we have a little bit of roast, you know, a pound or a pound and a half of roast. But we couldn't get no lunch meat, no nothing, because they went for that. And whether you're gonna buy lunch meat or you buy regular meat, you know, and the same with the bread. You only got so much bread or so much butter, maybe a little bit of butter for the whole week. So a lot of times there was no food. Otherwise you had something to give to the farmers, like dishes or the shoestrings or the shoe polish, anything, or the towels, or if you could bring some of that, if you had some of that, they might give you some meat, or they might give you a loaf of bread, or milk or something, but you had to give them something, bring something. So, and some of them did never have to give it away to the government, and we don't have nothing on our own. Yeah, well, it was tough times, tough times. My mother said, lay on your stomach. If your stomach hurts, lay on your stomach. And my mother, well, that's why my mother had, she almost died. My mother was on her deathbed when I was about 5, 6 years old. She had the cholera. She got the cholera. Nothing stays down there, throw up and all this. So my father was in Russia as civilist, not military. He was in Russia. He was where he had to come home, because my mother was so sick. So they thought she gonna really die. And he came home and he brought a bottle of Russian vodka with him. And my aunt got a dozen of eggs, and she used the egg yolk and with a spoon of vodka, strong vodka, and mixed it up and fed it my mother just a little tiny bit with a teaspoon. That egg yolk and that booze, and that must clean my mother's system and all the infection and what you have when you got cholera. And she got better just by feeding her the vodka and the egg yolk. Yeah, they brought her back really very slowly, but she looked like this. And my mother was only, my mother was maybe 30 years old.
When you were in Nuremberg and after the bombing and you guys came out of the shelter,
Oh yeah.
what do you remember seeing?
See?
Yeah.
Oh, you don't. You see. You couldn't find no more street. You don't see. You just like they show it in the movie when they bombed out. All cities were bombed out like this, and then you walk over dead bodies, stepped over, or you stepped over bombs who never went off. They could have went off, but they just lay there. And you see all that. My mother holded me by hands, and we usually went to my grandma's house or to the relatives and see if they alive or if they, buried in their things, or houses were burning, where they put the bombs, they were burned. And